Traditional wedging. Using a wedging table, the potter can take pieces of clay and pound it on the surface in order to remove air pockets from the clay. It's also referred to as bamming and slamming the clay. Kneading the clay. A variation of wedging is known as kneading, where the potter will roll the clay back and forth on the wedge board in order to remove any inconsistencies or air bubbles in the clay. The pug mill. The pug mill is a device that is used for mixing and wedging the clay also. In this particular situation, we're using a Bluebird pug mill, which has a vacuum pump located at the top, and it will literally remove air pockets and air bubbles out of the clay. Therefore, it is unnecessary to go to the wedge table. As soon as the clay comes out of the pug mill, it is then ready to be cut, rolled into a ball, and placed on the potter's wheel. Preparing the clay the bad way. Once a piece of clay has been used on the potter's wheel, it cannot immediately be recycled and reused. It has to be pugged in the pug mill again in order to eliminate air pockets. Centering is an important part of mastering the potter's wheel. The first thing the potter wants to do is to get the clay in the middle of the wheel head as much as possible. The speed for centering should be at a fast rate. It is important to have your hands in a consistent position to where you're pushing down and forward with the clay as it spins on the potter's wheel. Once the clay has been centered, it is important to remove the hands slowly. Wedging or coning up is a method of preparing the clay on the wheel where the potter removes any air bubbles or inconsistencies that might remain in the clay. Bad centering techniques. Elbows should be placed close to the body, and you should avoid releasing from the clay quickly. Opening the V. The right hand should be used for making the V shape in this procedure. The left hand is the bracing hand, and you lock your hands together with the right hand thumb over the wrist of the left hand. The wheel speed for this procedure needs to be fast. Making the floor. The left hand is used in a clawing action in order to make the floor of the cylinder. Be sure that the floor as you make it is as level as possible. It should be a flat shape about 3/4 of an inch thick. Recentering. This procedure allows the potter to form a cone shape, which is the foundation for pulling the cylinder wall. Pulling the cylinder wall. An important aspect of pulling the cylinder is maintaining a medium to slow wheel speed. When pulling a cylinder wall, the body position is critical. The hands, the head, and shoulders should be directly over the cylinder being pulled. Also, remember to continually apply water to the inside and outside of the wall of the cylinder to ensure a smooth and consistent pull. The outside hand is pulling the clay up and inward, and the inside hand is pulling the clay outward and up. multiple views of hand positions used in forming the cylinder wall. The position of the inside and outside hands are critical to the successful creation of a cylinder. In pulling the cylinder wall, the hands must work as a unit. Therefore, the thumb and the wrist of the two hands are connected together whenever possible. The index finger of the outside hand has been bent to form a knuckle which will be used to lift the clay to form a cylinder wall. The middle finger of the inside hand is pressing outward and over the knuckle of the outside hand to keep the clay in position for pulling. Notice that the thumb on the outside hand is braced against the cylinder wall to aid in steadying the hand positions. As the pull reaches the top of the cylinder, it is critical that the hand positions be maintained until the hands have cleared the cylinder wall. At the beginning of each pull, make sure that there's a sufficient amount of water on the clay wall to ensure smooth pulling. As the cylinder is being pulled up, remember to keep the walls going in to form a cone or pyramid shape, which will give you maximum strength. A potter's needle can be used to trim the top lip to make sure that it is perfectly even and smooth. The hands and fingers can also be used as a method of smoothing and controlling the top lip of the cylinder. A fettling knife can be used to trim and level the base of the cylinder. Notice that in the trimming of the base with the fettling knife, there's a small ledge which the knuckle can be positioned on in the second pulling of the cylinder. It is important to lift the large amount of clay up on the second pull, but then slowly reduce the pressure as you go to the top in order to distribute the clay evenly. On each subsequent pull of the cylinder wall, the potter's needle can be used to trim the lip as needed. Also, the hands can be used to level and even the lip in the process. The following procedure is known as collaring in. As the cylinder grows in height, it's important to continue to choke the cylinder in and maintain the cone or cylinder shape. Notice in this final pull of the cylinder that the knuckle begins at the base where the trench was originally established. The inside hand, the fingers are pushing the clay outward over the knuckle as it lifts the clay up the cylinder wall. As the pull approaches the top of the cylinder, it is important to ease off the hand pressure in order to evenly distribute the clay. In order to make the cylinder wall even and smooth, two fingers can be placed on the outside hand, even with the fingers on the inside, and move slowly up the side of the cylinder. This will make for an even and smooth wall. An alternative to using your fingers is to use a wooden rib. This technique is a smoothing traditional outside wall. The rib can also be used on the inside if the potter is attempting to shape a cylinder into some other form, such as a vase or a jar. Once the cylinder has been formed, the potter has several options and decisions to make about how to finish the design of the piece. For example, the top can have a neck and lip shaped by using fingers, and other techniques that have been used in pulling the cylinder can be employed in designing the top of the form. For example, the collaring technique can be used to choke the neck of the cylinder in. Or the fingers can be used to reestablish the lip and set the angle of the lip being designed. Once the design has been established, the final finishing is a critical part of the process. A chamois cloth can be applied to the lip to make it perfectly smooth and even. At the bottom, a fettling knife can be used to trim the base and also establish the contour of the base. A cutting wire is used to remove the cylinder from the wheel head. Once the piece has been removed from the wheel, the potter has several options for decorating and altering the form. In Japanese, raku means the enjoyment of pleasure. The first step in glazing a piece of pottery is to clean the base with a damp sponge. After the work has been cleaned, the surface can be decorated with various stains and oxide washes. The first part of the pot to be glazed is the inside. The firing of a raku piece can be very fast, spontaneous, and creative. The first step in the firing process is to place the glazed pieces of pottery on the shelf of the homemade fiber kiln. The second step is to light the burner to the kiln. The gas pressure is increased on the burner, and as a result, the flame will go under the shelf of the kiln, and the heat will then enter the top chamber of the raku kiln. Firing a raku kiln requires good safety equipment, sturdy tongs for removing the pots, safety glasses, and a good pair of leather gloves. For reducing the glazes in the raku process, several types of combustible materials can be used. Straw, sawdust, and also old newspaper. The potter continues to increase the flame to the raku kiln. Usually it takes around 25 minutes for the glazes to mature in the firing process. Notice that you see the openings in the kiln which will allow the potter to view the glazes. Once the kiln has reached temperature and the glazes have melted, the potter will reduce the flame back to its original warming position. The top of the fiber kiln is removed from the base and the glowing pieces of raku pottery are revealed. The tongs are used to remove the pots from the kiln. The glowing hot pots will ignite the combustible material that is in the trash can, and flames will occur. A lid is placed on top of the trash can to seal the container and to begin reducing the glazes in the pottery. The potter will open the container and add more combustible material to generate flashing of the glazes on the pottery. The pieces of pottery will remain in the trash container for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. The pottery is removed from the trash container and placed in a container of water in order to set the glazes and the colors that have been achieved.